This Transformers 96 here within the video where I'm going to be reviewing the movie Logan. So I don't do too many movie reviews. I usually just do it for the big superhero movies or just big movies that I, collect the toys from and do reviews and things like that. So I definitely want to do a review for Logan. This was a movie that I was very much anticipating, really just since the first trailer. I mean, I was always kind of like excited for it because it was Hugh Jackman's last going, I knew that. So I was always kind of excited about it. But then the first trailer really blew me away, and then ever since then, I have been really stoked for the movie's release. So let's get started here. I do have, I have a bit of an outline here that I'm going to try to stick to. However, I'm sure that, when I see the movie again, there's going to be more stuff that I was like, ooh, I was planning to say that, but I forgot, things like that. So I'm sure that I won't cover everything that I want to cover in this review. However, I'm going to try to cover the most I can. I've seen it 4 times, so I have, I've seen it enough to kind of, come up with some stuff that I do want to say about it, of course. And I do want to say that this is going to be spoiler filled. I'm not going to hold anything back. So definitely do not watch this if you haven't seen the movie because you don't want things ruined for you. So starting off just very briefly, I do want to mention it, but I don't want to dwell on it. It's the Deadpool preview that's in front of it. This was very cool, and it was something that I had no idea was coming. So it was very exciting, and it was a really nice preview. Lots of little Easter eggs in there as well, which was very fun, and it's a nice way to start it off. As far as the tone goes, it doesn't work with the movie, so I am glad that they really have a separation with it, and it wasn't just like the beginning of the film or anything like that. However, I'm glad that it was not the end credit scene because I really don't feel like this movie deserves or needs an end credit scene. So I'm happy about where they placed it. But that was nice and fun. The overall, just the story, I'm just going to say some general things here. The story of this film is really nice. It's very well defined. It's extremely character driven, which I think is fantastic. And it's a wonderful story. It doesn't need to be a superhero story. This doesn't need to be a superhero movie to make the story interesting. It's actually incredibly interesting and satisfying on its own. And I absolutely love that. And it's character driven, but it's driven through characters that we've seen over the last 17 years, but it really takes them and puts them in a new light, which I really love. I think it's really fantastic. But I'll go deeper into that when I talk about the characters themselves. Then the R rating, just to briefly cover the things about the R rating. First of all, the language in this film. I thought it was going to be kind of weird or seem semi-forced that we've seen these characters over 17 years and they really haven't cursed for the most part, other than Hugh Jackman's cameo in First Class, things like that. So to then all of a sudden see them curse extensively, I thought would seem a little like, oh, now we've got the R rating, so now we can do it. But it really doesn't. It really feels like it fits the story because these people are just run down. They really are kind of done with life to a certain extent. So I think that the cursing felt more like an evolution of the characters rather than, oh, we got the R rating for this movie. So that was something I was impressed with that I didn't really expect. It's not a big deal, but it is quite nice. The nudity, when I saw that there was going to be brief nudity in this film, I figured, they're going to show Hugh Jackman's ass again because they do it in just about every X-Men movie. So I think it's hysterical that for the first time that they have an R rating, there's no Hugh Jackman nudity. It's actually just somebody that he's driving. I thought that was very funny because in all the other PG-13 movies, Hugh Jackman's always nude to some degree. So I thought that was very funny, just personally. Then the violence. The violence is very good. It's quite brutal. I'm not a big fan of gore, and this movie is there's some things that do disgust me, but for the most part, I really do like the violence in this movie. I think it's very nice and it's very well deserved. Obviously, with the Wolverine lending himself to violence, so I think that this movie definitely deserves it, and there's some cool scenes with it. I mean, I love how violent X-23 can be as well. I think that even if this movie wanted to be PG-13 and took out the blood, they'd have a hard time keeping it PG-13 considering a lot of this violence has to do with children, either having violence inflicted upon them or being violent against others. So I think that no matter what, even if they took out the blood, that they would still need an R rating for this movie. So I'm glad that they just went from the beginning and did it correct. And personally, just my favorite kind of R-rated scene or shot in the movie is when X-23 is standing over the evil Wolverine and just alternating her arms, left and right as she stabs him just constantly in the chest. I think that's just an awesome scene. I don't know why, but I derive so much pleasure from it. It's just so cool. So I really did. I think that this movie definitely deserved its R rating in all the categories and was, well deserved of it and very nice. Moving on to the characters, first of all, Logan. Really did love this interpretation of Wolverine. That's quite a different from what we've seen in the past. He's run down. He's just kind of done with life, and he's really only still living because he wants to protect Charles, because Charles is all that he has left, and he's even considering suicide as well. I think that these are great themes for Wolverine, and something that's been hinted at in the movie's past. However, that really comes to fruition in this movie when it's just blatant. It's blatant and it's there, and it really drives that dark and that kind of old type of feel that these characters have, which I really love. So I thought that Wolverine was fantastic, and I absolutely love the fact that he wants to die. However, he through this movie kind of finds a reason to live to some degree. However, it still just allows him to die happy rather than to keep him alive. So I do really love that character. Charles, I thought was really great. I mean, he was different than what I was expecting. I love the fact that he is, of course, like the most powerful mind in the world, but he has, a mental disease, as a lot of elderly people get. I think that's just a very realistic spin and something that I never thought of. And I thought that Patrick Stewart, of course, did a great job. I would think that if there are any nominations that come out of this movie from the Golden Globes or possibly even the Oscars, I would think that although Hugh Jackman did a wonderful job, that Patrick Stewart would have the better chance of getting a supporting actor nomination. But, that would be great, but there's a long time before that's ever seen. But anyway, I think that his performance was really nice. I love the fact that he was really insane at the beginning, and I felt so bad for him. He was reduced to living in this water tower while he really just has some plants that he takes care of. He seemed like he had really fallen. And considering he was the character that everybody looked up to for advice and everything like that throughout the other films, he's been the main character or the guidance character throughout the other films. So to see him reduced to the character that others need to take care of, that was very powerful, and it kind of mirrors real life with a lot of parents that this happens to. And Wolverine obviously looks up to Charles as a parent. So I thought that was just a beautiful twist. I really wasn't expecting it. I thought that was wonderful. And then X-23. X-23 was fantastic. I was really looking forward to her, and she didn't disappoint. I thought she was really great, and I liked the actor too. I think that the child that played her did a wonderful job. I mean, at the beginning, she doesn't have to do much because she's very silent, she's very stoic, but towards the end, I thought that she did some excellent scenes, particularly, and I'll go into this further, but particularly with Hugh Jackman's death. She really sold that. That was very impressive for a child actor. I was very impressed with that. I thought that because if she was a little unbelievable or if she went over the top, that scene would have not worked. So she really nailed it. I was very impressed. Then the villains in this movie are all quite nice. I'm not going to go too deep into these, but I want to call him a Ravager. That's not the case, though. The Reaver, yeah. The Alexander... No, I can't remember his name, but the Reavers were very nice. I thought that they were pretty good. The only villain I really want to talk about is X-24. X-24 is obviously the new villain that was created just for this movie. It doesn't have any basis in the comics, and it was... I like the fact that they did the X-24. The only issue I have with him is that... it kind of feels a little gimmicky because you have such a kind of a real world that they created. So to have just a straight up clone is a little distracting. However, I love the metaphor of it, that it is the evil part of Wolverine. So he's literally fighting himself, and considering that's the internal conflict throughout the entire movie, to see that externally, I think is great for, audience members who might have not caught on to it, to have it really in your face. I think that's nice just so that everybody can know about it, even though it's not really needed because we get that he has an internal struggle, but to see it, physically in front of us is nice. I like the poetic, pieces of it, but, it is a little distracting. I still do like it though. I don't dislike it, but it is slightly distracting that it's so, it's so kind of out of left field, considering this is such a realistic kind of world that they've created, particularly in this movie. Also, Caliban. I thought that he was very nice. He's obviously very different from the version of him in X-Men Apocalypse. I thought he was a good character. He was very endearing. He was like a character from the trailers that I wasn't looking forward to at all. And I thought that he did a great job. There's a lot of unspoken things in this movie, which I think it's nice that you don't have to spell everything out. However, I think that some people, particularly ones that are not comic book fans, would miss some of these things. First of all, the fact that Wolverine is dying, and it's the antimanium in his, I probably mispronounced that slightly, but it's the, metal in his bones that is kind of like poisoning him over time. That is basically said, but it's not really explained. So I would have liked a little bit more on that, but still, you get the point, so that's not a big issue. But my main issue is what happened with Charles earlier. There is this like Westchester incident that's referred to several times in the movie, and I think a lot of non-comic book fans really won't understand particularly what happened. They just kind of know that Charles did something. But obviously in the Old Man comic storyline, it's Wolverine that kills the entire X-Men, believing that they're villains because Mysterio kind of tricks him, but he does kill all the other X-Men. So they've obviously taken that concept and put a twist to it with having Xavier have one of his attacks, maybe his first attack, in the mansion, in the school, and injuring, I believe they said 600 people, and killing 7 of the X-Men. So I thought that was great, but it's a shame that they really never like fully say it. I mean, you really have to know about that story in the comics to even catch on to it, and then to actually hear the specific details is something that you're blink and you miss type of moment. So I loved the fact that they made Charles do that. I thought that was a great story, but it wasn't explained fully for the audience. I personally got the full effect of it just because I'm a comic book fan, but I would imagine that a lot of people wouldn't have gotten that. And then last, what I want to talk about is the deaths. The deaths are really great. First of all, the family that they meet, it's a great family. I love the moment where they're having dinner. I thought that was fantastic. And, I was, during that kind of scene, I was like, I wonder if this family is going to make it. I figured that they would, or at least that, some of them would, but all of them die, which was quite tragic. And they really, sometimes in a movie when they want to kill somebody that's innocent, they'll do something to kind of like show you, don't feel too bad type of thing, just so that they don't look like just absolute monsters for doing it. However, this movie doesn't do that at all. These are just the nicest people. They couldn't be any better. And then they just get all murdered, and pretty brutally too. It's not even like peaceful deaths. It's, being stabbed and throats cut and things like that. It's just really terrible things, and you feel absolutely awful for it. It's a huge emotional punch, so I do like that. But we already have an emotional punch in that scene, so I don't 100% know if it's necessary. However, I like the fact that they wanted to do it and they did it. They weren't too worried about it. They didn't just have the kid like escape as the parents got killed, which is something more acceptable. So I do like that they didn't pander to what people are okay with seeing, basically. However, I'm not 100% sure if it was necessary, but it still is a very big emotional punch, so that is very nice for the story. Charles' death, I thought, was extremely sad, and I love the monologue that he gives before he dies, and, the fact that he's saying that this was the nicest, without a doubt, this is the nicest night that I've had in many years, and seeing what his life is like at the beginning of the movie, that just, having a nice meal with the family, all that was so touching, really nicely done. And I thought that Patrick Stewart sold that very nicely. Like, if he is nominated, I would imagine that speech will be the clip that they show. But anyway, I really loved that scene, and then the fact that he's killed right after it, and I love that Wolverine runs in, and picks him up. And as he's picking him up, he's saying, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." Really love that, so that, Charles doesn't think that he was just killed by Logan. Just really fantastic writing. I think that the dialogue right before these characters die is really well done. I really love it. Speaking of that, Wolverine's death, he's obviously physically killed by his dark self, basically. And then, of course, Laura kills his dark self, just a big metaphor for, his demons finally destroying him, but Laura actually destroying some of his demons. It's a great metaphor that's been physically shown to us, so that worked nicely. And I do love the fact that when he was dying, the things that he said, he started off by saying, "Don't be what they made you," which is what he was trying to fight throughout his entire life, so giving, advice to his daughter now. And then and then also saying that, so this is what it feels like. That was a big, that was a fantastic line, delivered really nicely by Hugh Jackman, because he had such kind of a moment of joy before he dies, almost. And people have debated about what he meant by this. I've seen people talk about that possibly he was saying, this is what it's like to have a family, or this is what it's like to have a daughter, something like that. I personally do believe, and what I think that they were going for is, this is what it feels like to die, because we've seen him struggle and kind of want to die for a long time. So to see him kind of get that feeling, and not being happy that he's dying, but just kind of being happy that he's at peace, he's starting to get peace. I thought that was really beautiful and just a wonderful line. I also love the fact that this is the first time we hear Laura call Logan daddy. That's very touching as well. I've seen this, like I said, I've seen it 4 times. 3 of those times the theater's been pretty full, and there are sniffles going around all throughout the theater there. You can just hear people crying. It's quite an immersive experience. It's one of those really big pluses of actually going to the theater to watch this. You get the audience reactions to these moments, which is really fantastic, and I absolutely love it, and it's so touching, really is. And then finally, the last thing I want to say here is the funeral scene. I think that Laura reciting the dialogue from the Western that she was watching with Charles early on in the movie was really nice, and it really does kind of fit the theme of the movie, so I really love that. I think it's delivered quite nicely by that actress, and then the fact that she does take the cross and turn it on its side to form an X, I thought was beautiful as well. Logan is not a religious man, so I think that just, having a cross on there, I did notice and think that that was kind of odd. So I do like the fact that they made it different for him because he's not very religious, as well as the fact that he's an X-Men, so that it's he's more of an X-Men guy. So I did like that as well, and also it does symbolize the fact that the X-Men are dead, because with Logan's death, that does bring about the death of every natural born mutant ever. So, I mean, the naturally born mutants are extinct with Logan's death, which is huge, and it's also very sad because it means that the villains did win in the end, basically. There is a new generation that are now free, and they can kind of live on the legacy of the mutants. However, every natural born mutant is dead. I did just watch X-Men 2, like 2 nights ago, and seen Stryker say, somebody will finish what I started. Like right before he dies, he says that. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, somebody did finish what you started. That's such a, that's a thing that we hear in movies all the time, but we really never see it actually become true because the heroes always win. So to see the fact that that is the case, that the mutants did lose and they are finally extinct is a huge deal, and was very surprising, and is really very sad. This is a very sad movie, but it's extremely well written. The characters are super well defined. Like, even if this was the first time you saw these characters, they'd be super well defined. But then to have the extra 17 years of getting to know them just adds to this movie as a full experience. I really loved it. There's really like nothing that I can say bad about this movie. I think it's fantastic. I have a hard time judging how I compare it to other comic book movies, but just personally, I loved it. In a couple months, maybe I'll be able to compare it better. But this could be my favorite X-Men movie. I don't like to say those things though until I've had time to digest them over a few months, things like that. But I really love this. I think it's a fantastic movie. It stands on its own. It doesn't need to even be an X-Men movie to have the impact that it does. So, beautiful movie. I absolutely loved it. Sorry for this long review, but there was a lot of stuff I wanted to say, and this movie deserves it. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of my thoughts on the movie, and let me know what you guys think of the movie itself. Really fantastic, and I'm sure that I've only heard people gush about this movie. I haven't heard anybody complain about it, so this is just one of those movies that everybody's going to love, and it deserves it. So, thanks so much for watching.